Hello and welcome to God Calling Vocation Vibes. This is a podcast of conversations of little sisters of the poor among themselves and with special guests on the topic of vocation, the call of God upon a person's heart. My name is Sister Carolyn, and I'm delighted to have with us today Sister Constance. Sister, would you kindly tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. My name is Sister Constance Carolyn. I've been a little sister for 38 years, and I'm in the community of Washington, D.C., where I do communications work and also work in the field of vocations.
Thank you, Sister. So today, our topic is going to be the legacy of Pope Francis, specifically his vision of vocation. So I'd like to begin by seeing a reflection of a young woman on the topic of the joy that Pope Francis encourages us to. We met wonderful young people at the Young Catholic Professionals Conference in Dallas just in the past few days. And let's pause and listen to what she has to say.
Hi, my name is Megan Callaghan. I'm here at the Young Catholic Professionals Conference, and I'm here to chat a little bit about Pope Francis and his influence on my life. Several years ago, I read his apostolic exhortation, The Joy of the Gospel, which had a profound impact on the way that I view the universal call to holiness. Particularly, it made me ask this question: do I live the gospel message in a way that is joyful? Do other people see my life and go, wow, the call to discipleship is something that I want to imitate as well? And I'm so grateful for that invitation to look at my life and go, how do I live in such a way that people know that a life with Christ is a wonderful adventure? So that is what I'd love to share with you, and Pope Francis' influence on my own life.
Sister Constance, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think she really captured for me what the essence of Pope Francis is and what I'll always remember about him, which is the joy of the gospel with the emphasis on joy. And to me, she really captured also the heart of vocation and mission, the way Pope Francis talks about it. And I have been reading lately his encyclical on the Sacred Heart, which is his last major writing, and was very struck by how it links to his first major writing, which was that apostolic exhortation entitled The Joy of the Gospel, and where he talked about that we receive the love of God, and that gives meaning to our lives. And then how can we not want to go and share that great love with others, that great joy? And in the encyclical on the Sacred Heart, in the final chapter, he talks about mission in the same way. And I guess I saw in that a convergence of mission and vocation, and felt they were kind of interchangeable. So he talks about actually becoming a stream of life-giving water for others. And we do that by falling in love with Christ ourselves, being enthralled with him, being seized by his love. And then it's only normal that we want to share that great joy that we experience. We want to share that with others. We can't help but share that with others. And so I think that leads to mission, that leads to vocation. And so it really struck me that I didn't always see it this way when I was younger. I was kind of task oriented about, I'm coming to be a little sister to take care of the elderly. And I saw it very much like I knew it wasn't another job or another career, but I didn't appreciate the aspect of love. And now I do. But to see it as, okay, God has enriched my life, filled my heart to overflowing with this love. And so how am I going to spend my life sharing that? To whom is he calling me? With whom is he calling me to share that? To whom is he calling me to go forth to give that love? And it has really struck me in reading this encyclical on the Sacred Heart that, that's a fundamental vocational question is, Jesus, you have loved me so much. I'm just like head over heels. And so what am I going to do with that? Where am I going to take it? Because it's not just for myself. It has to overflow like that stream of life-giving water.
You know, that brings to mind scriptures of recent days in this Easter season in which we're
Yes.
recording. And you know how the apostles were saying, you know, they were told not to talk about Jesus and his love. And they said, well, we can't help it. You know, we
Right.
have to talk about what we've seen and heard. Yes.
Yeah, we can't not talk about it. We can't not want to not just talk about it. Talking is important, especially I think in our culture today, but we also have to show what that love means through service, through loving others, through I've been struck in some of the TV coverage that has surrounded the Pope's death. When they show him, he was always out there and he was touching the poor and the marginalized. He didn't hold himself at a distance from them. And so, isn't that what vocation really is? What mission really is getting out there and rolling up our sleeves, so to speak, and tangibly bringing the love of God to others.
Yes. And, you know, I know there are a lot of people out there in society who are who don't have the gift of faith. And yet, when we go yesterday, when I was coming home from the conference of the young Catholic professionals, people were coming up to me at the airport, Sister, will you pray for me, sister? They recognize in our call this love of Jesus and hopefully this closeness to Jesus and the way that we live. And it makes them desire to connect with him too. And I just praise him. It's just such a grace to be an instrument for them in that way.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. You know, it's a privilege for us to be able to witness to Christ like that. It's also a challenge because maybe you were tired coming home from that conference, but there you were, a public witness, and yeah, people were, thank God, able to see God in you in that situation.
Yes, and the document also it asks that we never be ashamed to tell others about our friendship with him, how good and how beautiful it is that we found him. And so I think just as a witness, in the doctor's office, in the grocery store, in the drugstore, in the airport, it's beautiful to see how he uses just a humble sign to draw others to him. And it's really a grace that other people become eager to discover what is the source of your joy.
Yes. And I mean, I can look back to the very dawn of my vocation, and I really didn't have a clue about what vocation was or meant, but I was drawn in by the joy and the love of the little sisters whom I met, first among whom was yourself, because I volunteered, for those who haven't seen us, with Sister Carolyn when I was a kid in high school. But there was definitely that sense of it started as a fascination just about like what makes her tick, and them being struck by that and then wanting it and then seeking it by spending time in the chapel and wanting to learn how to pray, to to learn to have that joy for myself. But then I really learned and have always felt convicted that it's not enough to have that love of God for myself. It's for others. And I think part of vocation, whatever your vocation might be, whether it's to consecrated life or married life or priesthood or a single committed life, I think each of us has a unique individual call. And yes, it's important to be able to communicate the love of God in general when we're in the airport or the market or whatever. But I think he also has a more specific call for each of us. So it might be to shower your children with your husband and children with God's love and to share your joy with them. For us, it was a definite call to serve the elderly. Perhaps it would be children or, the homeless, another group, but it's just, our lives won't be complete. They won't be um, full ourselves unless we let that love flow like that stream, that living stream, to enrich the lives of others.
And along with that call to love and to share that love is the mercy of Christ that Pope Francis often encouraged us to. And when I was in the airport, I met one of the conference attendees on his way home. His name was Sky, and I met him at the airport under a picture of an airplane. And I asked him what inspired him regarding the legacy of Pope Francis. And let's listen to what Sky has to say.
So my name's Sky Verzosa. I'm a third-year medical student from Seattle, Washington. And when it comes to Pope Francis, I think in wake of his passing, the main thing that I've noticed that he's always preached and really advocated for is that idea of mercy in the church. And two things that I've noticed in the past week, I think, is the first one is when someone asked him, what do you think about people falling asleep praying? He said, I do that all the time, and sometimes when I do that, I take solace in the fact that God loves it when people fall asleep in his arms. And so there's that. And I think also that idea of, I saw recently when a child asked him if his father, who was not a believer, was going to go to heaven and he can meet him there. He came from it from that kind of angle of mercy and understanding to, provide that relief and support to that child, because if the father is able to bring the children to baptism, how much more is that father adored, because that's what God would have done for us. So I think that idea of mercy when it comes to Pope Francis is something that has been very appreciated in this church, and we will always be praying for him, and we hope to see more of that kind of thing in the church in the future.
So, Sister Constance, can you please comment a little bit about mercy as shown in the consecrated religious life, and specifically in our vocation as Little Sisters of the Poor, since that's the vantage point from which we experience the call to mercy?
Sure. I think that mercy, definitely for us, Little Sisters, mercy is hands-on. Mercy is responding to the misery of others. And so we can't keep mercy just as a matter in our heads, like something intellectual. Mercy is when we're called to an active response to others. So for the young man in the video, he mentions he's in medical school, and that perhaps is a similar vocation to ours. But for us, that mercy is definitely lived out through listening to the residents and trying to accompany them where they're at, to help them to understand God's love for them, his forgiveness if they've have regrets in their past. But it's also and very much every day, it's hands-on. It's helping them to take their meals, helping them to receive the personal care that they need, bathing them and helping them to ambulate, to walk. I see that, Christ came, healing was so much a part of his mission, and we might not be able to heal the elderly of old age, but we bring healing and comfort and solace to them in the loving way that we care for them, in showing them as we're caring for them that they are so important in our eyes, and therefore important, that's a reflection of how important they are in God's eyes, like the individual attention that we give to them. I hope speaks to them of their personal worth and dignity in God's eyes.
Yes, and that leads right into the service and openness and compassion for all in need. And of course, one of the categories, groups of people whom Pope Francis felt a special compassion for was those who are immigrants to our country or to any country, and the compassion that we as Christians in our vocation are called to offer them. So let's listen to another reflection of a Young Catholic Professionals Conference participant on that topic.
Hello, my name is Megan Riscal. I'm a part of YCP Dallas. I'm excited to be taking part in my very first conference here at YCP this weekend. Pope Francis really was important to me, and will continue to be important. But Pope Francis had a very special place in his heart for immigrants, and this really connected me to Pope Francis. I'm a first generation in the United States. My father is from Cairo, Egypt, and he came to the United States in the 70s and was able to start a beautiful life here. And I look at my father being a hard worker, and I have a lot of compassion for immigrants. And I know Pope Francis did as well. And feeling the love and commitment he had to making sure that immigrants felt at home is what makes America so great, and what really bonded me to the message of Pope Francis. Many messages, but one of the great ones.
So, Sister Constance, how in the living out of the consecrated religious life, our specific vocation, is that openness to immigrants, but to all peoples lived out?
Well, I think it's lived out in a very concrete way, that we're not picky or choosy about whom we serve. We try to serve everyone who comes within our realm, wherever we're living. And we try to welcome everyone. For us little sisters, it's a matter of welcoming the elderly of every race and religion. We also employ people of every race, religion, and nationality. So, for instance, here in Washington, D.C., where I live, we have, I think it's over 20 different nationalities represented among our staff and residents. And, we, I think, give a beautiful witness that people of different faiths and different races can all live together in harmony and in charity, because we do it on a daily basis here in our home. Our employees come from everywhere from Ethiopia to El Salvador, and yet they're together, contributing to the quality of life of our elderly residents. So I think that in itself gives a witness in our country where we are today, in the unfortunately tense atmosphere when it comes to talking about immigrants and refugees. But we cannot deny that that was a huge part of the papacy of Pope Francis. And so to honor him, I think it's so important to try to open our hearts just a little bit wider to whoever the stranger might be on our way.
One of the things that really resonated with me among Megan's comments was how she referenced the Holy Father's concern that immigrants feel at home. And I think throughout his legacy, his concern for prisoners, for those who are disabled, for those who are sick, for those who are ostracized by society, this compassion always included that element of having other people feel at home, and the importance of our reaching out to do that. And as priests and religious, we don't have a personal home and family of our own, because our hearts are called to be home for those whom we serve. And it's such a wonderful privilege to be able to do that. The parish priest in his parish, for his parishioners and all of his flock, even beyond those who actually come to church, to be a shepherd to all. And consecrated religious, what a gift it is to be able to be a home and a place of welcome for those who are looking to be included in life, who are those who are searching for God's love. And it is a special part of the call of a woman to help people feel at home. And so that feminine genius that Pope John Paul II used to talk about is a part of what enables a consecrated religious woman to, in a special way, reach out and help those she serves to feel at home in her presence and in her heart. And we little sisters of the poor, of course, are so blessed, because God has called us to make a vow of hospitality And that's in addition to the 3 traditional vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. And through that vow of hospitality, we are called to welcome Jesus himself in the person of the elderly poor whom we serve, but also its spirit overflows so that people feel welcome among us. And I pray that God will help me to do that well, to reflect his spirit of love and welcome to those whom he sends into my path and those whom I go out in search of as a missionary disciple. This is God Calling Vocation Vibes. I'm Sister Carolyn, and I have with me Sister Constance. This is a podcast of discussions about vocation, sponsored by the Little Sisters of the Poor. And today we are talking about Pope Francis and his legacy, and in particular, his vision of vocation. So anybody who would like to offer comments or ask questions, we're easy to reach at LSPUSA-Podcast@gmail.com. That's LSPUSA-Podcast@gmail.com. And if you are a young person, man or woman, who desires to be connected with vocation resources, please don't hesitate to contact us. And if you're a young woman who is in search of someone to walk with her on her discernment journey, we're more than happy to help with that. So please, once again, don't hesitate to contact us. Hopefully we have that spirit of hospitality that emanates from the vow we're privileged to take, and we welcome you to come and to walk with us as we help you discover what it is that God has in his mind and heart for you and for your future. And Sister Constance, there was one thing that you mentioned that I think is so important in an aspect of that friendship that you discussed. Part of our friendship with Christ, one of the implications of that is that we need to be willing to be sent out. And I know that the young adults today who are really kind of in their season of discernment, whether they're aware of it or not, are at a point in their lives where they're trying to figure out where they're being sent, what their call is. And I'd like to introduce you to a young woman, Christy, who is also a medical student, who has a very clear sense of her call, born of her relationship with Christ and her compassion for his people. So let's pause for a word from Christy.
Pope Francis is the only pope who was a chemist, which I think is so neat because I studied chemistry before starting medical school, and he really believed and lived out the integration of faith and reason. As I've studied medicine in the last 4 years, I've been constantly awed by the beauty and the order and the mystery that God built into the universe. I've been inspired by his humble leadership style, living at the Casa Santa Marta and wearing simple vestments. As a soon-to-be doctor, it reminds me of the importance of living out humility in daily life and having a mission to lift up the patients that God puts in my life. Throughout my time in medical school, some of the most meaningful experiences I've had were in visiting and loving the elderly, especially those who are isolated or overlooked because of dementia or other ailments. Pope Francis really stood out for caring about the dignity of every human life. He was a strong advocate for the elderly and the sick and reminded us to go beyond their medical needs, to treat the whole person with honor and with dignity. The Little Sisters of the Poor's mission is more important than many people can know or appreciate, and it carries forward the heart of Pope Francis's message. You don't have to be a doctor or little sister to carry Pope Francis's legacy forward. Today you could visit someone elderly, reach out to someone who's isolated, or take a few hours to visit the sick. Even the smallest acts of love reflect the dignity that Pope Francis lived and preached, and they change the world one heart at a time.
So, Sister Constance, you spoke about the mercy and compassion and love and the concern for within our own apostolate with the elderly poor for all people. We have a variety of, we have not only the many different nationalities, but we have people who are articulate and fun, and we have residents who have declined and are weak in body and or mind. But in each of them, Jesus lives. And I know Pope Francis said early in his pontificate, don't just give to the poor, reach out and touch the poor. And we get to do that every day. Do you have any closing comments that you would like to offer, any encouragement to our young people who are trying to discern God's call for their lives?
I guess I would just say to young people, don't be afraid to open your heart to Christ. This goes back to Pope Benedict rather than Pope Francis, but he said to young people, don't be afraid to open your heart to Christ he won't take anything away from you. He'll only give to you. And Pope Francis would definitely say the same thing, that whatever your life, wherever God's plan takes you, your life will be beautiful and full and joyful to the degree that you allow him to seize your heart, and to the degree that you place him in the greatest place of honor in your heart, and let your life and your love flow from that. And you will be so happy yourself, so joyful yourself in bringing God's love and joy to other people.
Thank you, sister. And I hope that this has been helpful to our young people and also to the wider faith community that wants to support vocations. But our podcast is very much at the service of those who are in their discernment. And we want to assure you that we are praying for you and all of the little sisters of the poor and the precious elderly poor whom we serve. Do join us in that prayer. We'll be so delighted if you would kindly like and share and follow our podcast, leave a comment. And that is for the sake of vocations and of the church, because that will put it before the eyes of more and more young people. And hopefully they will discover this joy of a very close friendship with Christ that calls them to be at the service of his kingdom and experience that deep love and joy that we experience as consecrated religious sisters. So again, we all join together in praying for you, for each of you, and for your journey with Jesus. May it be blessed.
Amen.